Welcome to a Milk Market Tidbit for the January Dairy Products Report that USDA released yesterday. This is Dr. Lawrence Jones, and I'm recording this on March 5th. So the Dairy Products Report actually kind of sums up everything for January because we had the milk production report a little bit earlier and then the cold storage report. Now these were somewhat contradictory, at least in terms of narrative. So going into this dairy products report, we kind of thought, or at least I kind of thought, that we would make a little bit less cheese than December and a little bit more butter. But what it turned out is we made a little bit more cheese than we thought we would make. Again, down from December, but up from what our estimate was. And again, that's probably bad news for demand, and quite a bit more butter. Just kind of look at some of the numbers here. I always like to start with how much of the milk went into cheese. And I'm using a ratio of 10 pounds of milk to 1 pound of cheese. So it was a little bit higher than what the seasonal adjusted number would be. And it came in at 6.24, or about 62% of the milk actually went into cheese. Daily cheese production was up from the estimate, and again, that is consistent with what we said earlier. And then once we've got the cheese production, we can actually look at the rolling demand. And so right now, this is actually decreasing just a little bit. And what it's saying is that our demand should be about 38,566 pounds of cheese. We actually made 38,434. So that would say that we were actually underproducing a little bit, but only by 100,000 pounds a day, which I'm going to argue you can't even see. Overall, we need about 9.37 thousand cows. We're down to 9.33 on USDA, but again, I question those numbers. We've got a stocks to use ratio of around 37.8 extra days of cheese in cold storage. Biggest story here is this is just absolutely flattened out since the end of 2022. It's constructive to look at the ratio of cheeses, and so the Italian type cheeses is always the highest, and it actually came up a little bit. So we were a little higher than trend line on Italian. American, which includes cheddar, came down just a little bit, and then the cheddar by itself came down just a little bit also. The other cheeses came up just a little. So again, what we're doing is making less cheddar, less American, a little bit more Italian. If we look at the American cheese production, as I said, it was down off the seasonal adjusted level just a little bit. But if we look at the trend lines, we've been pretty well flat. I'm going to exclude this 2023, which was a little bit of an outlier of this. But we've been very flat for January production of American cheese since the end of 2020. If we look at the cheddar cheese, it was just down a little bit, again, off of this quite a bit. And the Italian type cheeses were right on where we expected them to be. Kind of do the same thing for butter. More of the fat was accounted for through butter, so that was clear up to about 22%, something on that line, but that was up over the seasonal number, and that kind of makes sense. If you're going to make less cheese, the fat's got to go somewhere. And again, we're making more fat, so this is from the egg prices just continuing to pump out the fat as a percentage. And so our daily butter production was actually up, and it's some of the highest that we've had in January, up off trend line and up off the seasonal adjusted number. So if we look at some of the other components, non-fat dry milk is down quite a bit. Now I think this leads to a very interesting narrative, because if butter was up but non-fat dry milk is down, that means most of the butter is coming from cream that's being skimmed off of other things as opposed to a butter powder plant. And that kind of comes back to this graph here, which is how much money can be derived from 100 pounds of class 4 butter relative to non-fat dry milk. And ever since middle of 2022, butter has become the strong one and non-fat dry milk's become the stepchild. And that's kind of leveling out here at about $2 right now. Ice cream production is down seasonably, and it was actually down with the seasonal adjusted numbers, so it's taken a little while to get ice cream going for this next season. Yogurt production is up a little bit off of the seasonal adjusted number and up a little bit from trend line. Lots of noise in this, but yogurt production is growing here just a little bit. Whey production came up. This is dry whey, and this is not surprising given the recent price action in whey, which has been declining quite a bit off of 50 cents down to 42 cents on the spot market. So whey coming up is, again, very indicative of these prices coming down. All right, that's a quick scenario on the dairy products report. We're going to have the global dairy trade, which is actually out today, and it's actually down. Cheddar's up, but whole milk powder and skim milk powder are down. We'll have the first national dairy sales report for March, the dairy slaughter, and then the WASDE report on Friday.